When M103, Canada's anti-Islamophobia motion, passed in the House of Commons recently, there was a cry of relief from people that had supported it. This was a bold condemnation of hatred, of Islamophobia, of bigotry. But the problem is, the motion wasn't just this toothless motion condemning hatred like Iqra Khalid and the Liberals who supported it wanted us to believe. No, the motion actually called for, I quote, a whole-of-government approach, unquote. That's what they wanted, a whole-of-government approach, unquote, to tackling Islamophobia. Now, a whole-of-government approach doesn't seem to be toothless to me. That seems like actual concrete action. And that action is going to first take the form of committee hearings undertaken by the Department of Heritage, the Ministry of Heritage, to look at the place of Islamophobia in Canada and how it is something the government is going to fix. Now, Anthony Furey of the Toronto Sun spoke with Liberal MP Haydee Fry, who's connected intimately with that process, and asked her a very simple question as far as who is going to have the opportunity to shape the government's approach, the whole-of-government approach. And he asked her very candidly, should there be radical voices included, or even will there be radical voices included? And here's what she said. We have to make sure we hear from all voices. What is one man's radicalism is another man's whatever. We cannot really say to people, you can't come unless they're inciting hatred. We need to make sure we hear from all voices. Now, if this was the Liberal Party's position consistently on issues like abortion, on issues like deficit, then sure, I might give them a little bit of credibility on this, but not the way they are now. When she says we have to hear from all voices, what she's actually saying is that she doesn't want to acknowledge that there is a problem with radical Islam. The Liberal government doesn't want to acknowledge that there is a problem with radical Islam. So when she says anyone can come, are we going to talk about this preacher who was telling Jews that they needed to be killed, accursed Jews? What about this preacher that also called for infidels and Jews to be killed? What about all of these other ones that we know of, these stories that come out of people preaching absolute hate at the Islamic pulpit? Now, do these people represent the majority of Muslims and the majority of Islam? No. But there is a fundamental problem that these voices are considered radical because they're so brazen about it. But what about more subtle radicals? What about the radicals that are pushing for things that are far less ostentatiously out of whack with Canadian values? That'll be one of the issues, and I want to spotlight one of the other organizations. Now, the National Council of Canadian Muslims presents itself as one of the moderate mainstream voices of Muslim Canadians. Well, one of the things that this organization advocates for is mandatory anti-Islamophobia training in public schools in Canada. Will this idea be considered as part of the whole-of-government approach? Condemning speech was only the tip of the iceberg. For anyone that said M103 wasn't about censorship, well, wait until you see what this committee's findings will be. For the Rebel.media, I'm Andrew Lawton. If you want to stand up for free speech and open discourse, make sure to check out all the great content at the Rebel.media and premium memberships. Work you won't see anywhere else, certainly not in the mainstream media, only at the Rebel.media.